For this lesson and all the others in this module, please keep in mind that all the configuration we're going to do is going to be down on the cloud dashboard. Then the access points are going to use a specific protocol and a specific port to communicate with the cloud, and from that cloud they are going to get their configuration. So the configuration is done in the cloud, and in the cloud you can go to organization and create networks, and this is where you are going to decide how your access points are grouped together based on location. And then each AP inside each network will be appearing under the global network name here, and you'll be able to have a common configuration for all the access points in a given network. So let's look at how you configure SSIDs. The first thing you do is, of course, go to wireless, and here you have all these menus about access points, maps, etc. We'll come back on those extensively. But the one of interest for this first lesson is SSIDs. So you go there, and you have here the list of all the SSIDs that you already have created for that given network. As you can tell, each access point can have up to 15 SSIDs. What does that tell you? If you remember, that tells you that the access point have 15 MAC addresses to support MB SSIDs. So that's the maximum on this solution, 15 SSIDs per access point. There can be up to 15, but the system is going to display the first 4. And this is reasonable because in most networks, you do not want to have more than 4 SSIDs on any given radio anyway, because each SSID is going to take time just advertising itself with beacons, probe responses, etc. And we say on average, that's about 3% of the time of your access point is taken by sending beacons and probe responses. So if you have too many SSIDs, you consume time too much just saying that you have a network. So that is not very efficient. So as much as you can, you should try to limit the number of SSIDs on your access points. And we say typically 4 or 5 is the max limit you want to set yourself to. Less than that is even better. So you can create a new SSID. If I say show all, you see I have plenty unconfigured SSIDs. And if you want to create a new one, you just rename it. Let me take this one for example. Rename it. So you change its name. And every time you make a change on the dashboard, you have to think about going down and click Save Changes. If you change the screen without clicking Save Changes, the change you made is not taken. Once you have the name taken care of, you can, of course, enable the SSID or disable it, and then, of course, edit its settings. That's what we want to do now. And here, you'll find pretty much the same type of information we've been discussing so far and seeing on the autonomous access point. What kind of authentication you're going to use, what kind of encryption you're going to use. And you see the same usual schemes: open, that is no encryption, no authentication, or pre-shared key. And of course, they're going to allow you WPA-v2 or web. Remember, WPA was an intermediate mode, so it's still supported somewhere on this page, but it's not the prime mode they are going to offer. You're going to use WPA-v2, which is the default, but it still allows backward compatibility with web, which, again, you don't want to use. If you set pre-shared key with WPA-v2, you have the choice to set up the key here, and you can see what the key is supposed to be. If you don't want to use pre-shared key, you can still use an older mechanism, which is MAC address authentication. And you see on the cloud solution is either or. You either or use WPA-v2 or you use MAC address. You don't use, like on the autonomous, a sort of a hybrid mode where you have both WPA-v2 and MAC authentication at the same time. They decide that if you do one, it's probably good enough and you don't need to do the other. You can also use WP2 Enterprise, and we'll come back on that in the next section. But for now, let's use pre-shared key. If you set pre-shared key with WPA-v2, you have here the possibility to use WPA-v2 only, or use a backward compatibility mode that is going to allow also TKIP and WPA-v1. Of course, the recommendation is to use WPA-v2 because TKIP is going away, as you know. In the same page, you can decide to use 802.11r with a fast transition. Default is disabled, but you can enable it. And if you do so, then you'll have this fast roaming between the access points belonging to the same organization in the same network. Then you have a section which is only applicable if you use some type of web authentication. And that is here on this page because it's very common to use this Meraki Cisco access point system for guest access. And you see here, they have a vast possibility of allowing you to connect using web and authenticate or click and accept or be registered somehow. All the possibilities are here for you to create a guest network as flexible as you need it to be while making it comfortable for you to set up and manage. This system can even use the billing, that is to say you can record how many people each MAC address is using how long of your time and use that information to pass onto a billing system that is going to charge people based on how many devices were connected for how long. You can also filter who has the right to connect with a system manager century enrollment, where you will be enrolling people and devices, managing these devices, and only allowing these devices to access your network. There are also some other options for guest access, which are, I would say, more advanced and you don't need to bother about learning. Except if you're really interested in this system, in which case, go to meraki.cisco.com and look at the knowledge base and the configuration guides. They are very explicit and very clear. What is a bit more complex is that depending on what devices you have in your network, you may see some options in your page that some other people without these devices may not see in the same page. For example, bandwidth control. This is something that can be configured if you have a Meraki appliance, which is a security appliance. That appliance will be in charge of controlling the bandwidth. So if you have only access points, you may not see that option in your SSID page. You may see it if you have a Meraki appliance, because the cloud is going to recognize that your access point connects to a system where in the same network you have that security appliance, so it's going to offer you that option of taking care of the bandwidth at the SSID level because the appliance will be able to do it. So don't be disturbed if you see differences between the interface you see and the interface we describe here. There is a question of version, and there is no cloud version, so you may see a version that is slightly different from the one in this video. But there is also a question of what devices you have in your network compared to what devices we have in this example network. So don't be surprised if there are some differences. The last item that we'd like to go through is this one here, client IP assignment. You can use, which is the most common, NAT mode, where all the wireless clients will be isolated in the subnets, and then the Meraki appliance will be the NAT device that will be using NAT, to connect all these devices to the outside network. If you don't have this appliance, you may want to use what we call the bridge mode, where clients are going to go through the access point and send their DHCP request out, and of course, whatever DHCP server is in the network will be providing that IP address. Or you can use also a variation which is called layer 3 roaming, where if you connect through an access point and you get an IP address and you move to another access point in the same network, but that connects to another switch and maybe to another subnet, we can click you back to the original access point pretty much in this foreign anchor POA/POP logic that doesn't have the name here, but it's the same concept, so that you still keep your IP address, connect back to your original access point, and exit the network in the place where your VLAN exists. There is a variation of this new mode, which is called layer 3 roaming with a concentrator, where there is a concentrator appliance that is going to be this concentrating point for your IP addressing scheme. The layer 3 roaming, at the time we write these lines, is the new mode. You can also use VPN and connect through the access point to some VPN concentrator place. And if you do so, we'll make sure that we do not touch your packets as we forward you to whatever concentrator IP address you're using. Then, of course, if you have different access points connecting to different subnets, you may want to decide what VLAN clients may be in. If that's the case, if you have different VLANs, then you may have to enable this VLAN tagging to recognize one subnet from the other. And last, on this SSID, you can decide where this SSID is going to be available. On 5 GHz, 2.4, both. And if on both, do you want to keep the legacy rates, 11B rates? My recommendation will be to disable them unless you are in a very specific environment where you still need B rates. Alright, so that's the basic about SSID configuration. Let me click Save Change and go back for a minute to the authentication section.